Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to the Blood Red Morning Bulletin. I'm your host today, Patrick Smith, and I'm joined by Liverpool.com writer Ben Boxshot. Ben, how are you this morning?
Yeah, all good. Still kind of recovering from a virus, but getting there.
Yeah, you were under the weather at the start of this week, weren't you? But hopefully you're on a bit of a revival. Like Liverpool's transfers, hooray, having a revival in this week as well. Ryan Gravenberch looks to be happening, Ben, doesn't it? I mean, it's all pointing in the right direction. Of course, we have to start with him, don't we? Bayern Munich centre midfielder, Netherlands international. It's estimated that Bayern wants 30 million. Liverpool have reported the offer 25, but I'm sure they'll hash out that deal at some point. So can you see this one definitely happening, Ben? Is this maybe the one transfer we expect to go across the line before Friday?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Liverpool have put in a lot of work with Gravenberch. They kind of wanted him last summer when he went to Bayern. At the time, that deal didn't work out, but they've been working on this deal now since the start of the year, since it became apparent that Gravenberch wasn't really getting the game time that he wanted at Bayern Munich. Klopp is clearly a big admirer, and it seems like Gravenberch is keen on the move as well. So I think it works out for all parties involved. Bayern Munich just want to make sure that they recoup most of the money that they invested in him, and I think that's possible with this deal. I think overall, I think it's a good move. It's a smart move for Liverpool. I know people will be rolling their eyes because Gravenberch didn't really make it at Bayern Munich, wasn't given an opportunity too much. But then again, he did have very stiff competition and world-class competition. And, sometimes that happens. Sometimes, for whatever reason, a move doesn't work out. But, we've seen at Liverpool, Liverpool is a place where careers can be revived. Daniel Sturridge, Mohamed Salah, Felipe Coutinho, just to name a few names. They turned out pretty all right after not having successful stints elsewhere.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think Gravenberch is also really unlucky that Musiala is sort of not his breakthrough season as such, but his first season where he was recognised as one of Europe's best midfielders and he was playing in centre mid, like basically took up the slot that Gravenberch probably would have played in. So that's quite unlucky from on that front. And of course, you're breaking into midfield that's got Kimmich, Goretzka, and all the others. It's an unbelievably talented squad at Bayern Munich. There's no need to say that, but yeah, it's all pointing in the right direction, isn't it? We've got Bild's Christian Falk, pretty reliable source. He's basically saying that it's going to happen. TalkSport have claimed overnight that personal terms have been agreed to. Now they're basically just settling a thing. We've even seen on Twitter this morning that, of course, Liverpool fans, they love tracking those flights, don't they? There's a small private aircraft scheduled to depart Munich at 1 o'clock and land in Blackpool just over an hour later. It actually checks out on Flight Radar 24 as well. So there is a flight from Munich to Blackpool, private jet. Take from that what you will, everyone. Interesting one as well. Of course, Bayern also rumoured to be getting João Palhinha, who's maybe a Liverpool-linked target. Perhaps they could have and should have gone for a defensive midfield option. But speaking of that defensive midfield option, Ben, do you think Gravenberch is being signed as another one of these McAllister, Szoboszlai, Elliott, and 8/10 midfielders? Or do you think Klopp's definitely got an eye to be turning him into a 6?
I'm not sure. I think in a double pivot, it's possible. I mean, I think Liverpool have liked Gravenberch since he made his debut against them in the Champions League when he was 18, and he played in a double pivot back then, and he did really well, especially defensively. And I think ever since then, he's kind of been a sort of hybrid player who at Ajax can play a sort of double pivot, a bit like Paul Pogba, but he's also a very good number 8. I don't see him being a sole number 6 at Liverpool. But I think given the players that Liverpool have brought in, McAllister, he can also play in a double pivot as a number 6. Trent Alexander-Arnold has been sort of molded into it potentially being a double pivot coming in from that inverted fullback role. Dominic Szoboszlai, he's also played that double pivot role. He's also done it at Liverpool, kind of been forced to do it over the last few games. And on top of that, the players that Klopp has available as well. You look at Thiago, he can play a double pivot. Bajcetic is probably best in a double pivot as well. I don't see him as a sole holding midfielder. And even Wataru Endo, who was brought in as the holding midfielder for Liverpool, even him, I think, would probably suit a double pivot better. So I think moving this kind of deal for me suggests that Liverpool will be moving on from their formation of having that sort of diamond, so to say, but with a more offensive diamond in midfield. I think now it's going to be a bit more of a defensive diamond in midfield, if that makes sense, with probably two holding midfielders and maybe a number 10 or a box midfielder, because I think the profiles are there. Soboslai and McAllister could also play the number 10 role, and Elliott as well, and you have Curtis Jones. So I think it would make sense moving forward to trial that formation out.
Yeah, it's almost like reverting to Klopp's old Dortmund tactics in a way, with the two sitting in midfield and then the three and the one in front of them. I mean, basically 4-3-1, but it'll be skewed with Liverpool's new box formation. But it'll probably be a variation similar to how Dortmund did set up around, probably about 10 years ago now, isn't it, with that Champions League final side? I mean, crazy, that's 10 years ago. But yeah, anyway, let's hope Gravenberch can get across the line. I mean, I've got a sneaky feeling that flight must be him, hasn't it? It's got to be him flying over. So yeah, no worries. I'm pretty happy with that signing, to be honest. He's the one of all the rumours, I think, at 30 million. I think that's a brilliant price for him. He's still young. He's only 21, an amazing, amazing talent. Last summer, everyone wanted him from Ajax. I'm pretty sure he only had a couple of years left on his contract. That's why Bayern were able to get him for a relatively small fee. But yeah, unbelievable talent. I'm sure Klopp will definitely get the best out of him.
He had a really good.
Sorry, go
I just want to add, he had a really good under 21 Euros as well, similar to Curtis Jones. I know the Netherlands didn't do great at that tournament, but people are saying, oh, he's not in form. He's not, hasn't been great. Just this summer, he was pretty all right. I think if you look at the sort of metrics for midfielders in that tournament, Gravenberch ranked highly up there with Curtis Jones for a lot of those metrics. So I think even though, he hasn't played a lot of Bayern, he's still shown he's got enough quality, and, he's shown that his form is only temporary. But even that form is not as bad as people would think. I think when he's come on for Bayern as well, he's done well. Even the numbers seem to suggest that. So I don't think there is that much of a concern in that regard as well.
No, could not agree more. Yeah, still out from Disney as well as Mickey van der Van, of course. We did want to sign for Liverpool, but went to Spurs. But it's good you mentioned the Euro 21s, because I think the role of the double pivot in midfield has slightly changed now from being less physical, because typically, 5 or so years ago, you'd have wanted two relatively solid. You'd have wanted like a Gerrard and an Alonso, and they were both physically competent. Whereas Curtis Jones and Angel Gomez have both proven that you don't need to be massive to play in there. You can have two very skillful, almost not delicate, but lighter midfielders, and it does work. So I think, let's say, Basto and Gravenberch 100% could work with their skill sets as a double pivot, as you said at the top of the show, Ben. So yeah, exciting times. I think we probably will see them shift from a set 3 midfield to maybe a 2 with Trent shifting in. But yeah, interesting to see how that one pans out with Gravenberch looking set to join Liverpool. Let's move on then, shall we? Because Cheick Doucoure has not fallen through. It's basically off that transfer. Cheick Doucoure from Palace. Wide reports basically saying that Liverpool don't want to meet the 70 million asking price. I believe you've spoken to his camp, haven't you, Ben? So you've got an inside scoop for us on this one.
Yeah, I've spoken to him, and they pretty much just confirmed everything that's been reported. I think Liverpool were put off by the price. The player is not expecting to move. I think, it was one of those deals where it was always going to be difficult to pull off, given how much time there was left in the transfer window. And clearly, I think it's just Liverpool. Not everyone was fully convinced at Liverpool that was the right move, that was the right deal. So I think that's why Liverpool decided not to pursue it. And it's one that I think fans really wanted to happen. But I think if you look at it logically, think about the kind of price that was touted around for him, I think he's a fantastic player. He's a great player. But I think, having only had one season in the Premier League and, with some of the other prices touted for midfielders, I think it would have been a bit of a risk for Liverpool to make that move. And you can kind of see why Liverpool decided against it, because when you can get Gravenberch for 30 million, I think you'd rather take a punt on him for that price. And maybe, I know it's very late on in the window, but maybe leave some room for addressing the defender situation, buying a centre-back. I mean, who knows, I think there have been some reports that Liverpool are still exploring multiple options. So that is still a possibility on the cards. And I think if Liverpool were to pull that off, which is a big if, but if Liverpool can do that, if they can bring in Gravenberch and a centre-back, then I think you probably wouldn't complain that Liverpool decided not to pursue the Doucoure deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nail on the head for me as well. Look, I've taken a lot of convincing. We've done so many shows with various Liverpool.com journalists convincing me that Doucoure is a great player. Palace has played this season last year. I've not really been convinced by it this whole time, especially not at 70 million. If it was, say, the same price as Gravenberch at 30 million, yeah, I think you then take the punt on him and see if he can become that 6. But 70 million is a lot of money for someone who's still relatively unproven. 70 million can get you basically Joshua Kimmich or something like that. Not that you'd want him at Liverpool, but, it's crazy money for Doucoure. So I'm not surprised that one's fallen through, basically. Look, I know people rinse FSG for not spending money where it's needed to be spent, but I think that would have been the wrong place to spend it. Similar to Pellegrini, to be honest. I don't think he'd have been worth that money either. I was saying this on yesterday's show. But let's talk about another 6, shall we, that's rejected a move, but to Liverpool's rivals, it's Sofyan Amrabat. And we've probably done about 40 of these shows speaking about Amrabat, haven't we? He's basically rejected a loan move to Man United. Now, let's say Liverpool get Gravenberch across the line for 30 million. Is there room, as you say, for a centre-back and then potentially a 6 as well, if, say, Amrabat's in the same ballpark of fee? Or do you think we'll see Liverpool's midfield signings completed now, Gravenberch?
I mean, there is room, of course, because Gravenberch still counts as an under-21 player. So, logistically speaking, Liverpool could still register 2 players who are non-homegrown, even if a centre-back is signed who's non-homegrown. But is Amrabat the right fit? I'm still not convinced. I don't think. I think he's a good player. I think he's done really well at the World Cup, but I think he was helped out by Morocco's formation, which was very defensive. And I think when you play in such a defensive formation as a holding midfielder, it's a little bit easier to stand out. It's, your teammates are helping you out. You've got 3 defenders behind you, and there's a lot less room in front of the opposition attacker to get past you. So it's easier to stand out. It's easier to look good in defensive situations. At Liverpool, you don't have that. Liverpool's midfield has always been very open. Liverpool in transitions, defensive transitions have been very open. And I don't know if Amrabat covers enough ground to be able to do that job. I think technically he's a very good player. He makes really smart passes. He's really good in possession. And in those, deep lying sort of very defensive teams, he can stand out. But I just don't think that's Liverpool. And I'm not even sure if that's Manchester United. But, that's for them to figure out. That's for their fans to discuss. But for me, I think I wouldn't be very disappointed if he moved to Old Trafford. I think it wouldn't change United's situation too much.
Yeah, no, much like the Doucoure move, I'm kind of glad Liverpool are swirling Amrabat, to be honest. Great World Cup, but as you say, you could have had any competent enough centre midfielder playing in that side and they'd have looked amazing with their numbers. I mean, it's similar to Atletico Madrid. Their midfielders often have unbelievable defensive numbers, don't they, just because they're basically parked in a bank of 4 the whole game on the edge of their box. But anyway, we'll wrap the show up there, everyone. You can join me and Ben live from Blackpool Airport watching Ryan Gravenberch land. No, I'm joking. Basically, we'll bring you any news as soon as we have it on Gravenberch to Liverpool. It looks set that they'll be completed late today, probably tomorrow, though. So it's going to be a very, very busy one tomorrow. Of course, we've got a live stream for the Europa League draw. Make sure you're watching that with us on the Blood Red channel. The Blood Red podcast will be live, and we'll also have a transfer deadline day stream live tomorrow. So hopefully Gravenberch can be announced ahead of then. And of course, we've got Analysing Anfield going out later today with Josh Williams and Mo Stewart. Brilliant podcast. So make sure you subscribe to us on the Blood Red YouTube channel and whichever platform you get your podcast from. And of course, keep up to date with Liverpool.com for the brilliant articles from our writers like Ben. I'm sure will bring us loads of detail, nice little profile, I'm sure, on Ryan Gravenberch for those of you who want to know more about him. But for now, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you all again soon on the Red Blood Morning Bulletin.